Just 2 years ago, at 87, the man in question couldn't even stand up without piercing knee pain. His gait was slow, his feet barely leaving the ground, as if each step required exhausting negotiations between his body and the earth. Climbing stairs became a true ordeal. Getting dressed daily was torture. It felt like hours to pull on pants or tie shoelaces. Sometimes he'd sit on his bed, staring at his legs, wondering when they had become so heavy, so clumsy, so painful. For years, he tried countless remedies, pills, creams, injections. Some offered only brief relief for a few days. Others caused unwanted side effects like drowsiness, dizziness, or an upset stomach. He felt trapped between constant pain and unpleasant reactions. Though his doctors did their best, he sensed they were only fighting symptoms, not the root cause. He had almost resigned himself to a life of pain, believing it was an inevitable part of old age, that his body was simply fading and all he could do was endure. But one day, while sitting in the park, a woman he barely knew told him something astonishing. She wasn't a doctor or a nurse. She was just an elderly woman, a grandmother like himself, with wrinkled hands, lively eyes, and a story he never expected to hear. She told him about a homemade oil she'd used for years, revealing its secret preparation, application, and how it restored her mobility when she'd lost all hope. He listened with considerable skepticism, admittedly, but there was something special in her manner, a conviction only found in those who've experienced a personal transformation. This marked the beginning of something that would radically change his daily life. It wasn't magic or a trick, just a simple, time-tested remedy anyone could make. Today, he wants to share it, as what the reader is about to learn might help them just as it helped him. Before the pain, his life was measured but meaningful. He didn't need grand events to feel good, enjoying simple, daily rituals, morning walks, weekend gardening, or walking to the local store. He loved feeling his body move, experiencing the satisfying fatigue after an active day. There was something truly unique he wouldn't trade for anything: dancing with his wife. Every Friday, without fail, they'd play music in the living room and do a few light, even slow, steps. Sometimes it was a bolero, sometimes something more energetic, but always with a smile. She'd say that as long as they danced, they'd keep their youthful spirit. He believed her. He remembered once, bending to water a plant, feeling a slight tension in his knee. It was just a second, nothing ominous. He slowly stood up, thinking he must have slept in an awkward position. The next morning, he woke to find his legs stiffer than usual. Getting up was much harder. "I'm getting old," he told himself, and continued life as usual. For several weeks, these barely noticeable symptoms persisted. Slight tingling when climbing stairs, a feeling of pressure in his joints after sitting for long periods, a small burning sensation in his lower back if he carried something heavy. But because they were intermittent, he didn't give them much thought. Many people do this. They ignore the first signals because they don't want to acknowledge what their body is telling them. They convince themselves it's temporary, that they're just tired, or perhaps it's the weather. The more they neglect these warnings, the more they allow the condition to progress. His mistake was precisely this. He didn't heed his body's warnings in time. As months passed, what was once mild discomfort escalated into constant pain. What had been morning stiffness became a daily, exhausting battle with his body. He stopped walking much because his hips would start aching after a short while. He stopped gardening because kneeling was utterly impossible. Their shared dances ceased. The man in question couldn't turn his leg without feeling a piercing pain that forced him to freeze. Sometimes it seems the body is just tired, but what happens next can drastically change one's entire life. The bitterest realization comes only when you start losing what was so precious: freedom of movement. You don't notice how easily and effortlessly you existed until a simple walk around the block becomes an almost unattainable goal. Today, looking back, he clearly understands the body always sends signals. And if you don't listen to them in time, this neglect can cost many years of a full life. There was a time when pain appeared only occasionally, like a bothersome but fleeting guest. Over the years, however, it remained, becoming an unyielding shadow, following him everywhere. It didn't matter if it was day or night, if he was home or outside, moving or just breathing. It was always there. Every movement became a constant test. He could no longer quickly get out of bed. He had to lean on his elbows, carefully turn, slowly lower his feet to the floor, and take a few deep breaths, as if preparing for an upcoming battle. Sometimes, when standing, he'd lose his balance, not from dizziness but from stiffness. His knees refused to obey, his ankles felt petrified, and his hips complained with every, even the slightest, movement. He remembers standing in front of his closet for 5 minutes, trying to bend enough to reach a pair of socks. His 8-year-old granddaughter watched him from the doorway with tenderness and slight sadness. She offered to help. He refused. She insisted again. He had no choice but to let her. It was one of the hardest moments of his life, not because of the physical pain, but because it hurt more to realize an 8-year-old had to help him with something so intimate. He felt useless. He felt truly old. He began relying on painkillers almost daily. A whole box of them sat on his nightstand. He took them in the morning, sometimes at noon. They were essential for maintaining some functionality, but it came at a price. The medications upset his stomach, suppressed his appetite, and caused drowsiness at the most inconvenient times. He felt he was sacrificing his overall well-being just to get a few hours of partial relief. And it wasn't just his body that suffered. The physical pain permeated his mind, making him more irritable, withdrawn, and depressed. He started declining walks, visits to friends, and family dinners. Being among people when your body aches is a silent humiliation. He didn't want them to see him dragging his feet or realize he couldn't climb 2 steps without strong support. Sadness became an inseparable companion to the pain. Together, they began winning this battle. He often convinced himself that such was life. Some age gracefully, while others are simply less fortunate. But deep down, a part of him hadn't fully given up, a part that still believed there might be something beyond pills and resignation. He didn't know it then, but he was about to discover something that would change this story. Something simple, natural, and very real. For years, he clung to the idea that relief existed somewhere, that if he was persistent enough, he would eventually find a solution. So he tried absolutely everything. And when he says everything, he truly means everything. He started with physical therapy twice a week, exercises, stretches, heat treatments, massages. At first, it seemed to work, but the relief was brief. As soon as he returned home, the pain came back, like an old enemy merely hiding. He was told to be consistent, that he'd feel better in a few months. Months passed, and he remained the same. Then came injections. He was promised they were the latest medical breakthrough, that he'd walk like a young man again. They were painful, expensive, and only effective for 2 or 3 weeks. Then everything reverted or even worsened as his body became dependent and his wallet suffered. Each injection was a new hope, then another disappointment. He tried all sorts of commercial creams with strange names, strong odors, and unpronounceable ingredients. Some caused burning, others just left a sticky film on his skin, but none truly alleviated the pain deep inside his joints. Next were supplements: glucosamine, chondroitin, hydrolyzed collagen, turmeric capsules, ground ginger. Each bottle promised to restore cartilage, regenerate tissue, and reduce inflammation naturally. Some initially offered hope, but in the end, empty bottles brought no real relief, only more wasted money and greater disappointment. He remembered a doctor's appointment after an MRI of his left knee. He sat down, hoping to hear something new, something different. The doctor looked at him kindly, but with that cold, detached gaze he'd seen before, and said, "It's normal at your age. You have to learn to live with it. Learn to live with it." The phrase stuck in his mind. How could one learn to live with something that robbed him of his freedom, prevented sleep, and gradually diminished his quality of life? He left the doctor's office consumed by anger, not at the doctor, but at the entire situation, at the very idea that he had to resign himself to an ailment just because he was old. He felt tired, not just physically but morally, tired of searching, paying, trying, hoping, and falling into despair again. Tired of being treated like just another number, a hopeless case. And then, when he was no longer searching for anything new, when his spirit was at its lowest, something changed. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't a clinic. It was an ordinary conversation, an unexpected encounter that, unbeknownst to him, pointed him toward a path no doctor had ever suggested before. A natural, simple, and, most importantly, real path. A conversation that gave him hope. That morning, he didn't want to leave the house, but something inside urged him that he needed fresh air. He took his cane, a light scarf, and slowly headed to the nearby park. He sat on a bench to observe the life around him. Children running, dogs barking, and elderly people, just like him, silently walking in circles, each with their hidden pains. An unfamiliar woman sat beside him. Her white hair was neatly styled, her gaze calm. She carried a bag of bread for the pigeons and a small thermos from which she was drinking. They greeted each other like strangers, expecting nothing more than pleasantries. But something about her seemed familiar, as if she had encountered the same sad glances he saw every time he lowered his head in pain. First, they talked about the weather, then about grandchildren, and inevitably about their bodies. He told her his knees no longer allowed him to walk for more than 10 minutes without resting. She listened without interrupting, nodding with empathy, like someone who didn't need to imagine what he felt because she had experienced it herself. Then she told him, "I was the same," she confessed. "I couldn't even stand up without crying for back pain. I tried everything. Painkillers, injections, even acupuncture. Nothing helped completely until one of my aunts, one of those who knows ancient remedies, gave me a family recipe, a natural oil. It changed my life." He looked at her skeptically. He'd heard similar stories about miracles in homemade bottles or magical concoctions. He asked what was in the oil. "Turmeric, ginger, and a little copaiba oil," she replied without hesitation. "All mixed with extra virgin olive oil and prepared at home. I use it twice a day, massaging it into the inflamed areas." He didn't know whether to laugh or thank her. A kitchen remedy. That was it. After so many years of medications, doctors, and tests, the solution turned out to be an oil he could make himself. But something in her manner quieted his doubts. She wasn't trying to sell him anything. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't promise miracles. She simply told him what had helped her. This made him think. He left the park with that conversation swirling in his mind. He had nothing to lose. And if what she said was true, perhaps he had something to gain. That night, he looked for the ingredients. He had turmeric at home. He bought ginger at the market and copaiba at a local herbal shop that still smelled of wood and ancient remedies. He prepared the mixture, as she told him. It was simple, without complications. He stored the oil in a dark glass bottle, as she recommended, and let it steep for a few hours. The next morning at dawn, he applied a little to his knees, just a tiny bit, expecting nothing. It's not fair to say the pain vanished that same day. But something changed. He doesn't know if it was the oil, the conversation, or just the thought that there was still something new to try. What he does know is that this woman, with her bag of bread and warm thermos, gave him something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And in the midst of pain, that's worth more than any pill. When he finally decided to delve deeper into this oil, he realized it wasn't a new secret. In fact, it had been used for centuries in other cultures to treat joint pain, chronic inflammation, and stiffness. The problem is that, like many natural things, it's not taught in medical consultations or sold in large pharmacies. This makes it invisible to most people. The oil he speaks of combines very powerful ingredients, all natural, readily available, and scientifically supported. The main one is turmeric oil, known for its anti-inflammatory properties thanks to curcumin. But it doesn't act alone. Its power increases when mixed with other ingredients: extra virgin olive oil, fresh ginger, garlic, and rosemary. Here's how to prepare it step by step. Ingredients: half a cup of extra virgin olive oil, 2 tablespoons of turmeric powder or fresh grated root, 1 tablespoon of fresh grated ginger, 2 crushed garlic cloves, 1 sprig of fresh rosemary or a teaspoon of dried rosemary. Preparation: in a small saucepan, heat the olive oil over very low heat. It's important that it doesn't boil, but only warms gently. Then, add the turmeric, ginger, garlic, and rosemary. Maintain low heat for about 10 to 15 minutes, stirring frequently so the ingredients release their beneficial properties without burning. After this, turn off the heat and let the mixture cool completely. Once cooled, strain the oil through a cloth or fine sieve to remove all solid particles. Pour the filtered oil into a dark glass jar with an airtight lid. How to apply this remedy? Use a small amount of oil, applying it directly to the affected joint. Massage in circular motions for 5 to 10 minutes, preferably at night before bed. You can also apply it once in the morning, especially if stiffness increases upon waking. Frequency of use. Ideally twice a day, every day. Consistency is key to success. Where to store? The jar should be kept in a cool, dark place, away from direct light. Refrigeration is not required, but should be tightly sealed to preserve its properties. Important warnings. The oil is for external use only and should not be ingested. Avoid using on open wounds or irritated skin. If there are cuts, rashes, or infections in the application area, wait for them to heal completely. Before first use, it's recommended to perform a small test on the forearm, especially if your skin is very sensitive or you have allergies to any of the ingredients. This oil is not a magic remedy, but with careful, regular use and combined with healthy habits, it can bring significant benefits. The man in question uses this oil every night. It has become a small ritual for him, reminding him that he still has the power to care for his body with his own hands. And the best part is that this remedy can be prepared at home without spending a lot of money, without unnecessary chemicals, and with ingredients that nature gave us centuries ago. In the first few days of use, something began to change. Honestly, in the first few days, he expected nothing. He applied it like a man who had lost faith, with the thought, I have nothing to lose anyway. He applied the turmeric oil every night to his knees and shoulders, following Mrs. Rosa's recommendations. The circular movements were gentle, unhurried. After a few minutes, he felt a slight warmth, nothing intrusive. It was like a warm touch. It didn't sting, burn, or have a strong smell. It just felt natural. The first night, he slept better. He thought it was a coincidence. The second night, too. On the third night, he began to wonder if this was it. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours straight in years. He constantly woke up from pain or discomfort. But that week, something was different. He slept deeply. He woke up with less tension in his back. On the fifth day, he noticed it didn't take him as long to get out of bed. Previously, he needed to sit on the edge for several minutes, as if his body had to remember how to move. But that morning, he got up without thinking. He walked to the kitchen with a more confident stride. That's when the thought he didn't want to admit, yet slipped in. What if this actually works? He didn't tell anyone. Not his children, not his friends. It was something personal, like a secret he didn't want to utter aloud for fear it would shatter. But inside, something had changed. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't waiting for the pain to come. He was looking for it and couldn't find it. The second week brought confirmation. Morning stiffness began to subside. His fingers no longer hurt as much when he made a fist. He could climb stairs without stopping every 2 steps. One day, without even realizing it, he walked for more than 10 minutes straight in the park. When he realized it, he stopped. Not because he was tired, but because he couldn't believe it. That night, he went to bed with a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement because he felt something good was happening. Fear because he didn't want to be fooled by hope. He told himself it might be a temporary effect or just a good day. But with each passing day, the signs became clearer. His body was responding. The most striking thing wasn't just that the pain had decreased. It was the hope that began to revive, the feeling that not all was lost, that he could still live more easily with greater desire. And all this thanks to something as simple as an oil no doctor had ever told him about. Mrs. Rosa had told him with conviction, if you are consistent, this oil will give you back what you thought you'd never feel again. And now he saw it for himself. Discovering the oil was just the first step. What followed was even more important, a change in his attitude towards his body. because he understood something no one had clearly told him before. It's not enough to just remove the pain. You need to prevent it from returning. And that only happens through consistency, through small daily actions that together yield a big result. Today, he wants to share his routine. It's not complicated. It doesn't require money or great effort. Only commitment can lead to the desired result. Because once a person feels what it's like to move without pain again, they will make every effort never to return to their previous state. His day begins early, between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m. As soon as he opens his eyes, he takes a few minutes to gently stretch his legs and arms without getting out of bed. This is something he learned instinctively. If he gets up abruptly, all his joints seem to lock up, but if he wakes his body patiently, it responds much better. Then comes the application of the turmeric and ginger oil, which has become his faithful ally. He uses a few drops and gently massages the areas that bother him most: his knees, ankles, sometimes his shoulders. It's not a strong massage, but rather a circular, calm one, taking about 5 minutes per joint. This procedure activates circulation and helps reduce inflammation early on. After that, he eats a light but carefully planned breakfast: oatmeal with chia seeds, nuts, and a small amount of turmeric powder. He has completely eliminated white bread and processed meats, which he now knows exacerbated his inflammation. If he feels hungry, he adds fruits like papaya or pineapple, known for their digestive and anti-inflammatory properties. In the middle of the morning, if the weather permits, he goes for a walk. But it's not just an ordinary walk. Sometimes he does it in a small park near his home. And if he doesn't feel strong enough, he walks in warm water in a wide bathtub. Warm water relaxes the joints and allows him to move with less strain. It's a simple but extremely effective technique he discovered through reading, and it has brought him immense relief. Upon returning, he does a small warm-up, nothing complicated, just gentle movements of his arms, neck, hips, and legs. He feels his body thanking him. It reminds him that even though he is old, he is still capable of staying active. Throughout the day, he tries not to stay in one position for too long. If he's sitting, he gets up every hour. If he's been walking, he rests afterward with his feet elevated. And if something starts to bother him, he doesn't wait for it to get worse. He applies the oil again, rests, or simply listens to himself, because he has understood the body always warns, but sometimes people don't want to hear it. In the afternoon, he prepares an infusion with turmeric and ginger. It helps him relax his body before bed and enhances the effect of the oil applied externally. And something he considers fundamental, he tries to maintain his mood. Reading, writing, calling friends, solving crosswords, anything that keeps his mind sharp, because body and mind are more connected than one might imagine. Today, he doesn't consider himself completely cured, but he feels strong. He moves more freely. He wakes up without fear. And all this came not from a magic pill, but from a daily decision to take care of himself before the pain returns. This is not a perfect recipe for everyone, but if he has learned anything, it's that small habits, repeated with love, can change an entire life. Pain teaches in a strange way. It doesn't speak loudly, but it changes a person. It makes them quieter, more attentive. It makes them look at life from a corner, as if they can no longer fully participate. He learned to move slower, to plan his days around the pain, to decline plans, walks, or invitations because he knew his body wouldn't allow it. But what hurt him most wasn't that he couldn't run or bend over. What broke him inside was that he wasn't useful. He felt he was becoming a burden, that everything he did had to be accompanied by phrases like, "Be careful, I'll do it, you'd better sit down." He lost confidence in himself, and with it, a part of his identity. When he started feeling relief from the oil, he didn't believe it. He thought it was a coincidence, just a good day. But then another came, and another. One day, he realized he had climbed the stairs without thinking about each step. On another day, he was able to tie his shoelaces without stopping to catch his breath from pain. He looked in the mirror and smiled, not because the pain had completely disappeared, but because he was back. He started walking in the park again. He started making his own breakfast again. He opened jars again, watered plants, arranged books. Small things for many, but for him, signs that his body hadn't given up, that he wasn't finished. He had regained what he thought he had completely lost: self-respect. He felt capable again, worthy, master of his time and body. It brought back that spark that comes from the simple ability to say, yes, I can do it myself. And in all these changes, there is someone he will always thank: Mrs. Clara. He met her by chance in a town square he was visiting with his daughter. They sat on the same bench because there were no others available. They started talking about the weather, age, and aches. It was she who told him about Copaiba oil. Her tone was calm, but her words gave him more hope than any medical prescription. He never saw her again, but her advice has accompanied him every day since. The man in question doesn't know if Mrs. Clara realized how much she helped him with that simple conversation. But if she ever reads this, he would like to say, "Thank you for giving me my life back." Today, he addresses those who perhaps have also carried this pain for years, feeling trapped, resigned to the inevitable. He wants to say this from the bottom of his heart: it's never too late to find something that brings back the will to live. The body has memory, but it also holds hope. Sometimes it just needs a little push, a change, an oil, or even a simple conversation. If he, at 87, could walk with joy again, others can too. Don't give up prematurely. Perhaps what will change someone's life is closer than it seems. Today, he has spoken of the pain that silently lingers, settling in knees, shoulders, and hands. The kind that makes you doubt whether to go for a walk or stay seated for another day. He is told of the remedies offered, which alleviate pain for a while, but bring new burdens, new inconveniences. He described how he resigned himself, how he gave up, and how, by chance or fate, a conversation occurred that changed everything. That woman in the park had no medical training. She didn't wear a white coat, but she had something as valuable as technical knowledge, invaluable life experience. She told him about a natural oil, turmeric oil, which in her case worked wonders. He was skeptical, of course, like everyone, but he tried it. And he felt relief, then consistency, then freedom. It wasn't a miracle. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but little by little, day by day, he felt his body regaining strength, that he could move with greater confidence, with less fear. And with that, a part of himself he thought lost returned: the will to live. Today, he invites everyone, if something in this story has touched them, to try this remedy. Always responsibly. Always with professional support if needed. Don't make hasty decisions, but also don't postpone what might bring relief. Sometimes the solution lies not in the most expensive or the most modern. Sometimes it's found in what's natural, in what the earth has offered for generations.